Okay, so Wales and their plight and their winless streak of 14 matches without a win in Test rugby is now getting to the point where it is crisis. Not deeply concerning, but crisis. Now, I didn't watch the game against Italy today, and I didn't have a chance to watch the game against France last week, partly for technical issues. And the game today I missed because I missed the first half because I was watching the Leyton Orient Man City FA Cup tie. So I've been juggling this weekend about, do I watch Six Nations? Do I watch the football? Now, I missed the last round of the FA Cup, so I decided to give the nod to the FA Cup this weekend. However, 2 weeks' time, when the Six Nations resumes after this weekend, because there's a bye week, there's a rest week, I'll probably be diving in and really focusing on the Six Nations in 2 weeks' time. In Wales' situation, 14 tests lost in a row. And there's no two ways about this. This is not concerning anymore. This is now crisis. The problem is the seeds of this crisis were sown before the 2019 World Cup. And I'm holding no punches here. And I had disagreements with Welsh rugby fans back in 2019 and 2018 and 2017 on this very channel. You just have to look at the comment sections when I've done match reviews of Wales matches. Now, here's the thing. I'm not a fan of the style of rugby that Warren Gatland likes to employ, but it's effective, and it won him a lot of Six Nations titles, including Grand Slams. It got them to a World Cup semi-final way back when. So, well, I'm not a fan of the style of rugby and how Warren Gatland sets his teams up. It was effective when he had the tools on the field to implement that style. He then departs, and he, in his departing, brings in Wayne Pivac as his successor. He was crucial for the WRU in selecting Wayne Pivac. Now, the COVID disrupted Six Nations, Wayne Pivac wins it. Apart from that, it wasn't a great run under Wayne Pivac, to be brutally honest. One good Six Nations out of a rather poor run of form. What has happened since then is a lot of players have retired, very young team, and Lewis Rees-Zammit spectacularly leaving rugby union to go over to North America to try his hand at NFL was a warning sign a year ago. Since Rees-Zammit has left the Welsh setup, they've not won a test match. He was one of their better players. He was one of the more exciting players. He was a very marketable asset at a time when Welsh rugby needs investment and money. Now, to go back to 2019, and it was well known there were financial issues with the Welsh game. Very well known. Alan Wynne-Jones gave a very eye-opening interview with a reporter where he basically said, going into that 2019 World Cup in Japan, going into camp, players were very openly concerned, and they were raising their concerns to the WRU about will they have a club to return to. They were worried that the teams that they played for would go bust. And with the selection rules that Wales have in place, when you reach a certain age or a certain number of caps, you have to be playing domestically in Wales in order to get selected. Another reason why Rees-Zammit has decided to part ways with rugby union, because he was a Gloucester player. In fact, he'd been developed by Gloucester as well. And he'd reached that point where he was getting close to the cap limit and his age limit, because he was a younger player, where if he'd gone over that limit, he would not be eligible for selection, because Wales do not have the Matt Giteau rule that Australia brought in many years ago because they needed Matt Giteau for a World Cup run. And he was the best player to play 10 or inside centre, so fly half inside centre, that the Australians could select. So they were like, he's a good player, he's a great young player, we've got to get him back in the side in order to maximise our chances of trying to win the Webb Ellis Trophy. South Africa also then realised we're going to let our players play overseas. They've won back-to-back World Cups. They've won 4 World Cups in total, 3 of them since 2007, because they've now allowed and they've realised they can let their best players go overseas. Partly for the money side of things, because in South Africa, it's not the wealthiest country, and the South African economy isn't great. So the Springboks and the South African Union have realised if we allow our players to play wherever they want, domestically or overseas, it will benefit the Springboks. And that has proven to be the case. Scotland only has two professional teams at the top level in the URC. A lot of Scottish players don't play in Scotland. Ireland's a different case. Ireland has a very strong, structured provincial system. And it's a production line of talent. And there's a reason why Ireland have been so consistent since their Grand Slam in 2009. They realised very quickly they needed 4 strong regions. So now Connacht is a pretty strong provincial team in the URC. And they've been a production line of talent at all four provinces in Ireland for over 15 years now, and they've been one of the most consistent sides in World Rugby. Admittedly, they can't get past that quarter-final stage in the World Cup, but on a given year, they generally only lose one or two test matches maximum in a given year, normally in a World Cup, ironically. And so, while Wales is not the only country having financial issues with the union and the club game, it's getting to a point, though, where the player development is being impacted, the quality of performances is being impacted, and they're also struggling to attract good assistant coaches that can support the head coach, in this case, Warren Gatland. He doesn't have Sean Edwards anymore barking at that defence in training and basically barking in the players' ears from the grandstand, demanding high-energy blitz defence. Now, Sean Edwards has had a great time with France. He's transformed the fitness and the defence of that French team around completely, which is why they're one of the best teams in the world alongside Ireland, South Africa and the All Blacks. There's a reason why those teams are well drilled, well coached and have a win percentage in the high 70s. Wales haven't won for over a year. And this has now gone from concerning performances with a young team where they've got to learn to general crisis. Senior players are retiring from the test scene or retiring from rugby altogether and not being adequately replaced. The financial situation off the field is killing Welsh rugby. It's been killing Welsh rugby for a long time. They've been mitigating some of those issues when the economy was doing well, for example, because the team was playing well. You had some marketable assets. They've had some great players play for Wales who are superstars in the international game. Right now, they've lost their marketable superstar in Lewis Rees-Zammit. And that was a telling moment. When that departure from the team happened, you knew something was seriously wrong for such a talented, skillful and overall superstar player to leave the game. Tells you that money is part of it and the setup is part of it. How can the Welsh Union be happy with Warren Gatland's coaching? For one, because there has to be some responsibility on the coaches and team selection, which Warren Gatland has a big part in. But then you've got to look at the board of selectors, and then you've got to look at the selection rules Wales have as well. The game cannot financially sustain all Welsh players being based in Wales eligible for selection for the test side. It is just not a sustainable thing right now. They've got to think outside the box. South Africa have done that. And while South Africa is a tier 1 nation and has been for decades, the economy in South Africa is not great. And the Springboks and the coaching setup and the South African Union went, we're going to let our players play wherever they want to play. As long as they're playing, as long as they're getting game time, and as long as they can contribute to the Springboks' success, we're going to let them play overseas. And part of that is Rassie Erasmus has basically helped drive that idea of just letting the players sign with clubs anywhere and just play the best and be the best. They've won 4 World Cups, 2 of them back-to-back. They're now better than the All Blacks when it comes to Webb Ellis trophies. The All Blacks only have 3. And South Africa, as a rugby nation, is just, as a result, doing really well. England also have this similar policy where you've got to play domestically. And it's hurting England as well. Same with France, but France has a much stronger financial position off the field with the club game. Ireland has a much better structure off the field with their 4 provinces in the URC. But other nations like Italy and Scotland, who are tier 1 nations, just allow their players to play overseas, because it puts less strain on having centralised contracts and the domestic game, which just cannot financially sustain all the players playing domestically. It just wouldn't work. Wales need to look at how other nations are being successful, whilst money is a problem in rugby union. I think that's the root cause of the issue, because it is impacting player development. It is impacting player retention in the sport, because players are giving up the game earlier because they can get better pay in a non-sporting environment, or they're swapping sports like Lewis Rees-Zammit. So this 14-game losing streak, this 14-match winless run, I think is going to become 15, 16, potentially 17 by the end of the Six Nations. And when it reaches that point, what do the Welsh Union do? Do they have to restructure the game off the field completely? Or do they stick with Warren Gatland and hope he can turn it around like he did when he was first brought in back in the mid-2000s? The situation has drastically changed economically and financially, and the game is on its arse. And while I've had my disagreements since I've had this channel with Welsh rugby fans, you claim I have a bias against them and I don't like them, and I don't like the style of rugby that Warren Gatland plays, but when it works, it's effective. What I'm concerned about is a tier 1 nation collapsing financially and dropping down to tier 2 or tier 3 status. We've got World Cup seeding coming up. The tour in Japan is going to be crucial. And when you've got ex-players like Dan Biggar and Jamie Roberts, who were key components of Grand Slam winning sides, basically sat there in the studio following another defeat going, that was terrible. There was no continuity in play. There was no structure in play. It doesn't matter what players you've got. If you have a game plan, play to your strengths, play to the plan, do the basics. Players weren't even doing the basics. And when you've got two ex-players of that standing in the game basically dissecting a performance going, we were crap, and the opposition just played everything better, you can cop a defeat if you play well. You can learn a lot from that. But when you're playing so badly, it's hard to learn from a defeat. But things are clearly going wrong. The confidence is shot. And some of that does have to lie with Warren Gatland and his selection. But when he stated when he was reappointed he wasn't aware of the financial state of Welsh rugby, he is living in La La Land. It has been well known about for years. It was reaching ahead before COVID in 2019 when his then captain, Alan Wynne-Jones, was like, we're not sure if we're going to have teams to play for when we return from the Japan World Cup. This has been brewing for a good 5, 6, 7, 8 years, the current financial state, which has been made worse by the COVID pandemic. So that just strikes me as just being not reading the room and being on the defensive when he's been approached with that question, I think a year or two ago, which didn't strike me as the best answer he could give. And when you're reappointing an old coach who left the role because he had taken the team as far as he could at that point, his successor gets sacked, and so they go, oh, please come back. We've sacked the guy that you told us to hire. Says to me that the Welsh Union is like an old boys club and is not actually resolving the issues off the field. But there we go. Thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts on what is going on with Welsh rugby. 14 defeats in a row, though, is a new national record. Even tier 2 and tier 3 nations don't have a record like that. When they're playing against comparable tier 2 or tier 3 nations, that is a diabolical record for international test rugby, which is deeply, deeply concerning and has to be sending alarm bells to the players, the union, and the sponsors, because the sponsors who are investing their money into the sport be like, well, are we just pumping money into a failing product? You want to see some success and some reward for sponsoring and getting something out of it. This is deeply worrying and could lead to further problems down the line. There needs to be a complete overhaul of the finances, the off-field structures, the player development, and the selection rules. But there we go. Thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts on the situation in the comments section below. What do you think is going to happen long term? Can they snap from this losing streak, or are they going to get pummeled in every game in this? Are they going to get pummeled in the remaining 3 games, should I say, against, quite frankly, even with England with their issues, better opposition? Let's not kid ourselves. They've got to play Ireland. They've got to play a very attack-minded Scotland side and an England side that, if the young players click, could be dangerous. They've lost to a far improved Italian side, who have got a lot of talent, a lot of pace, and much better structure. They've lost to a dominant French side. They are in trouble. They could be battered throughout the Six Nations, wooden spoon, limited losing bonus points, and this is going to be a problem. But there we go. That's my view on things. Thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts in the comment section below, and I'll have some more content for you guys very, very soon.